The Seven Dials Mystery, Chapter 16. Bundle arrived at Wyvern Abbey just in time for afternoon tea on Friday. George Lomax welcomed her with great politeness. "My dear Eileen," he said, "I'm so happy to see you here. Please forgive me for not inviting you when I invited your father, but I honestly never thought this kind of political gathering would interest you. I was both surprised and delighted when Lady Caterham told me you were interested in politics." "I really wanted to come," Bundle said, sounding innocent. "Mrs. Makata won't arrive until the later train," George explained. "She was speaking at a meeting in Manchester last night. Do you know Thesiger? He's quite young, but has an amazing understanding of foreign politics. You wouldn't guess it from looking at him." "I know Mr. Thesiger," Bundle said, and she shook hands formally with Jimmy. She noticed he'd parted his hair in the middle to try and look more serious. "Listen," Jimmy whispered quickly while George was briefly away. "You can't be mad, but I told Bill about our plan." "Bill?" Bundle said, annoyed. "Well, Bill's one of us, after all," Jimmy said. "Ronnie was his friend, and so was Jerry." "Oh, I know," said Bundle. "But you think it was a mistake? Sorry." "Bill's fine, of course. It's not that, but well, Bill messes things up." "He's not very quick-witted?" Jimmy suggested. "But don't forget one thing. Bill has a very strong punch, and I think a strong punch is going to be useful." "Well, maybe you're right." "How did he react?" "He held his head a lot, but, it took a while for the facts to sink in, but by patiently repeating the story using simple words, I finally got it into his thick skull. And naturally, he's totally committed to helping us." George suddenly returned. "I need to make some introductions, Eileen. This is Sir Stanley Digby, Lady Eileen Brent. Mr. O'Rourke." The Air Minister, Digby, was a short, cheerful-looking man. Mr. O'Rourke, a tall young man with friendly blue eyes and a classic Irish look, greeted Bundle enthusiastically. "And here I was thinking it was going to be a totally boring political party," he mumbled cleverly. "Be quiet," Bundle said. "I'm political. Very political." "You know Sir Oswald and Lady Coote," George continued. "We've never actually met," Bundle said, smiling. She was quietly impressed by her father's description of them. Sir Oswald shook her hand with an iron grip, making her wince slightly. Lady Coote, after a somewhat sad greeting, turned to Jimmy Thesiger and seemed quite pleased to see him. Despite his bad habit of being late for breakfast, Lady Coote liked this friendly, pink-faced young man. His cheerful personality fascinated her. She had a maternal desire to help him get rid of his bad habits and turn him into a serious worker. She immediately began telling him about a nasty car accident that had happened to one of her friends. "Mr. Bateman," George said briefly, moving on to the next person. A serious, pale-faced young man bowed. "And now," George continued, "I must introduce you to Countess Radotsky." Countess Radotsky had been talking to Mr. Bateman. She was sitting far back on a sofa with her legs crossed boldly, smoking a cigarette in an extremely long turquoise holder. Bundle thought she was one of the most beautiful women she had ever seen. She had very large blue eyes, jet black hair, smooth skin, the slightly flat nose of a Slavic person, and a graceful, thin body. Her lips were colored with a lipstick that Bundle was sure Wyvern Abbey had never seen before. She asked eagerly, "This is Mrs. Makata, yes?" When George said no and introduced Bundle, the Countess gave her a dismissive nod and immediately went back to talking to the serious Mr. Bateman. Bundle heard Jimmy's voice in her ear. "Pongo, Mr. Bateman, is completely charmed by the lovely Slavic woman," he said. "It's sad, isn't it? Come and get some tea." They ended up near Sir Oswald Coote again. "That's a nice estate you have, chimneys," the important man commented. "I'm glad you liked it," Bundle said humbly. "Needs new plumbing," Sir Oswald said. "Bring it up to modern standards, you know." He thought for a minute or two. "I'm renting the Duke of Alton's place for 3 years while I look for my own place. Your father wouldn't sell, would he?" Bundle was stunned. She had a terrible thought of England filled with countless Sir Oswald Coots in houses just like chimneys, all with brand new plumbing. She felt a sudden intense anger, which she told herself was silly. After all, comparing Lord Caterham to Sir Oswald Coote, Sir Oswald was clearly the dominant one. He had one of those powerful personalities that made everyone else seem insignificant. He was, as Lord Caterham had said, a human steamroller. And yet, in many ways, Sir Oswald was a stupid man. Outside of his area of expertise and his intense determination, he was probably very ignorant. 100 gentle joys of life that Lord Caterham appreciated were meaningless to Sir Oswald. While having these thoughts, Bundle kept chatting pleasantly. She heard from Mr. O'Rourke, who managed to stay by her side, that Herr Eberhard, the German inventor, had arrived but was resting with a headache. Bundle felt a pleasant sense of excitement as she went up to change, mixed with a slight fear whenever she thought about Mrs. Makata's arrival. Bundle felt that dealing with Mrs. Makata would not be easy. Her first shock came when she came downstairs, quietly dressed in a black lace dress, and walked through the hall. A footman was standing there, at least a man dressed as one. But his strong, square figure didn't suit the disguise. She stopped and stared. "Superintendent Battle," she whispered. "That's right, Lady Eileen." "Oh," Bundle said, unsure. "Are you here to keep an eye on things?" "I see. That warning letter, you know, really scared Mr. Lomax. Nothing would satisfy him that I should come down myself. But don't you think—" Bundle started and stopped. She didn't want to suggest to the superintendent that his disguise wasn't very effective. He seemed to have police officer written all over him, and Bundle couldn't imagine even the least suspicious criminal failing to be cautious. "You think," the superintendent said firmly, "that I might be recognized?" "I did think so, yes," Bundle admitted. Something that might have been a smile briefly crossed Superintendent Battle's face. "Put them on their guard, right?" "Well, Lady Eileen, why not?" "Why not?" Bundle echoed, feeling a bit slow. Superintendent Battle was nodding his head slowly. "We don't want any trouble, do we? Don't want to be too clever. Just show any criminals who might be around, well, just show them that someone is here, so to speak." Bundle looked at him with some admiration. She could imagine that the sudden presence of a famous person like Superintendent Battle would discourage any criminal plan. "It's a big mistake to be too clever," Superintendent Battle repeated. "The most important thing is to avoid any trouble this weekend." Bundle moved on, wondering how many of her fellow guests had recognized or would recognize the detective from Scotland Yard. In the drawing room, George was standing with a worried look and an orange telegram in his hand. "Very annoying," he said. "A telegram from Mrs. Makata to say she won't be able to join us. Her children have the mumps." Bundle's heart gave a leap of relief. "I especially feel bad about this for your sake, Eileen," George said kindly. "I know how much you wanted to meet her. The Countess will also be very disappointed." "Oh, never mind," said Bundle. "I'd hate it if she came and gave me the mumps." "A very upsetting illness," George agreed. "But I don't think infection could be carried that way. In fact, I'm sure Mrs. Makata wouldn't have risked that. She is a very principled woman with a deep sense of her duty to the community. In these stressful times for our nation, we must all consider—" Just as he was about to start a long speech, George stopped himself. "But it will have to be for another time," he said. "Luckily, there is no rush in your case. But the Countess, sadly, is only visiting our country." "She's a Hungarian, isn't she?" said Bundle, who was curious about the Countess. "Yes, you've probably heard of the Young Hungarian Party. The Countess is a leader of that party. A very wealthy woman, widowed young, she has dedicated her money and talents to public service. She has particularly focused on the problem of infant death, which is terrible in Hungary right now. Here is Herr Eberhard." The German inventor was younger than Bundle had imagined.
He was probably only about 33 or 34. He was awkward and uncomfortable, yet his personality wasn't completely unpleasant. His blue eyes seemed more shy than sneaky, and she thought his more annoying habits, like the one Bill had described of biting his fingernails, came more from nervousness than anything else. He was thin and weak-looking, appearing anemic and frail. He talked rather clumsily with Bundle in formal English, and they were both happy when the cheerful Mr. O'Rourke interrupted them. Presently, Bill rushed in. There's no other way to describe it, like a favorite big dog entering a room, and immediately came over to Bundle. He looked confused and stressed. "Hello, Bundle. Heard you got here. I've been working hard all afternoon, or I would have seen you sooner." "Are the demands of the state heavy tonight?" O'Rourke suggested sympathetically. Bill groaned. "I don't know what your boss is like," he complained to O'Rourke. "He looks like a kind, chubby little guy, but Cotter's, George Lomax, is absolutely impossible. It's pressure, pressure, pressure from morning to night. Everything you do is wrong, and everything you didn't do, you should have." "Quite like a quote from the prayer book," remarked Jimmy, who had just walked up. Bill looked at him sadly. "No one knows," he said emotionally, "what I have to put up with." "Entertaining the Countess, eh?" Jimmy said with a grin. "Poor Bill, that must have been a painful experience for a woman-hater like you." "What's this?" asked Bundle. After tea, Jimmy said with a grin, "The Countess asked Bill to show her around the interesting old place." "Well, I couldn't say no, could I?" Bill said, his face turning bright red. Bundle felt a little worried. She knew all too well how easily Mr. William Eversley was charmed by women. In the hands of a woman like the Countess, Bill would be easily led. She wondered again if Jimmy Thesiger had been wise to trust Bill with their secret. "The Countess," Bill said, "is a very charming woman and incredibly smart. You should have seen her looking around the house. She asked all sorts of questions." "What kind of questions?" Bundle asked suddenly. Bill was vague. "Oh, I don't know. About the history of it, and old furniture, and, all sorts of things." At that moment, the Countess swept into the room. She seemed a little out of breath. She looked stunning in a tight-fitting black velvet dress. Bundle noticed how Bill immediately moved closer to her. The serious young man with glasses, Mr. Bateman, joined him. "Bill and Pongo have both fallen hard for her," observed Jimmy Thesiger with a laugh. Bundle was not at all sure that it was a laughing matter. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.